The scalding soup hit 8-year-old Lily's face like liquid fire, her piercing scream echoing through the mansion as her wheelchair-bound body convulsed in agony. "Please, it burns," she sobbed, her tiny hands clawing at the pumpkin soup dripping down her cheeks. But her stepmother Victoria only smiled coldly and whispered, "Next time, maybe you'll think twice before embarrassing me in front of our guests." At that exact moment, the front door burst open, and billionaire tech mogul Robert Chun dropped his briefcase in horror, witnessing the unthinkable cruelty being inflicted upon his disabled daughter. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe, give this video a like, and tell us in the comments where in the world you're tuning in from. Now let's begin. Robert had built his empire from nothing, creating the world's most successful artificial intelligence company. But standing in that opulent ballroom, surrounded by New York's elite, he realized he was about to lose the only thing that truly mattered. Lily, paralyzed from the waist down since a devastating car accident that claimed her mother's life 3 years ago, had become the target of Victoria's escalating abuse. The very fortune Robert had accumulated to secure his daughter's future was now funding her torment. Victoria, his second wife, had systematically isolated Lily from her father through a web of lies and manipulation, convincing him that his daughter's withdrawn behavior was simply grief-induced rebellion. Tonight's public humiliation was just the beginning of Victoria's plan to have Lily declared mentally unstable and committed to an institution, clearing her path to Robert's billion-dollar inheritance. If Robert didn't act immediately, he would lose his daughter forever, and the weight of that failure would destroy him just as surely as it would destroy her. The mansion fell deathly silent as Robert's shoes clicked against the marble floor, each step reverberating like a gunshot through the crowd of frozen guests. Lily sat motionless in her wheelchair, soup still dripping from her golden hair, her small body trembling not just from pain, but from years of accumulated fear. Victoria straightened her emerald gown and prepared her practice performance, tears already forming in her expertly made-up eyes. She had perfected this routine over countless smaller incidents, always managing to twist the narrative until Robert believed his daughter was the problem. "Darling, thank goodness you're home," Victoria began, her voice quivering with false emotion. Lily had another one of her episodes. She wheeled herself into the serving table, and when I tried to help her, she became violent. The soup spilled during the struggle, and I'm afraid several of our guests witnessed her outburst. She gestured helplessly at the stained carpet and scattered dishes, her performance so convincing that murmurs of sympathy began rippling through the crowd. But Robert wasn't looking at Victoria. His eyes were locked on his daughter's face, and for the first time in 3 years, he truly saw her. Not the rebellious child Victoria had described, not the burden he had convinced himself she had become, but a terrified little girl who had been crying out for help in the only way she knew how. The red welts on her cheeks told a story that contradicted every word from his wife's lips. Lily lifted her head slowly, her blue eyes meeting her father's gaze. In them, Robert saw not defiance or mental instability, but a desperate plea for salvation. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the uncomfortable shuffling of guests, "I didn't do anything wrong. I just wanted some water." Her small hand reached toward him, fingers trembling with a mixture of hope and terror that he might reject her once again. The truth hit Robert like a physical blow. Every business trip he had taken, every late night at the office, every time he had chosen to believe Victoria's explanations over his daughter's tears, it all crystallized into a moment of horrifying clarity. His own child had been living in hell while he built his empire, and he had been too blind to see it. Dr. Miranda Torres, a child psychologist who had been among the evening's guests, stepped forward from the crowd. Her professional instincts had been triggered the moment she witnessed the scene, and she couldn't remain silent any longer. "Mr. Chun," she said quietly but firmly, "those burns on your daughter's face are consistent with intentional assault. This wasn't an accident." Her words cut through Victoria's fabricated narrative like a surgical blade, exposing the lies for what they were. Victoria's mask began to slip. Her tears dried up instantly, replaced by a flash of rage that she quickly tried to suppress. "How dare you make such accusations?" she hissed at Dr. Torres, but her voice lacked its earlier conviction. The gathered guests, many of them parents themselves, began to look at her with suspicion rather than sympathy. Robert knelt beside Lily's wheelchair, his hands shaking as he gently touched her face. The soup had left angry red marks across her delicate features, and he could see older, faded bruises he had somehow missed before. "I'm here now," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry I wasn't here before." But Victoria wasn't finished. As the crowd began to disperse and whispers of scandal filled the air, she played her final card. "Robert, darling, you're clearly upset and not thinking rationally," she said, her voice taking on a patronizing tone. "Dr. Whitmore has been documenting Lily's psychological deterioration for months. We have signed papers declaring her a danger to herself and others. The ambulance is already on its way to take her somewhere she can get proper help." As if summoned by her words, the sound of sirens began wailing in the distance, growing closer with each passing second. The blood drained from Robert's face as he realized the full extent of Victoria's conspiracy. Dr. Whitmore, a disgraced psychiatrist who had been stripped of his license in 2 other states, had been making house calls to examine Lily for weeks. Robert had been told they were routine checkups to help with her grief counseling, but now he understood they were assessments designed to build a case for involuntary commitment. Lily's eyes went wide with terror as the sirens grew louder. "Daddy, please don't let them take me away," she begged, her small hands gripping his arms with surprising strength. "She said if I ever told you the truth, she would make sure I disappeared forever. She said no one would believe a crazy, crippled girl over a respectable woman like her." The words hit Robert like physical blows, each syllable revealing another layer of the psychological torture his daughter had endured. Victoria had weaponized Lily's disability against her, using society's prejudices to ensure her silence. The very vulnerability that should have protected her had been turned into a prison of fear and isolation. "The commitment papers are already signed," Victoria continued, her voice growing more confident as the sirens approached. "Dr. Whitmore documented multiple incidents of self-harm, delusional behavior, and violent outbursts. Even if you try to fight it, the process will take months, and by then..." She let the threat hang in the air, her meaning crystal clear. But Robert hadn't built a tech empire by backing down from fights, even when the odds seemed impossible. His mind, trained by years of high-stakes negotiations and corporate warfare, began calculating his options at lightning speed. He pulled out his phone and speed-dialed his head of security, speaking in rapid, clipped sentences that commanded immediate action. "This is Robert Chun. Code red at the mansion. I need a full security sweep of all electronic devices in the house. And I want every communication between my wife and Dr. Whitmore documented and preserved. Contact Jennifer Martinez at the district attorney's office and tell her I need an emergency injunction. And give me the best family law attorney in the state on the phone within the next 5 minutes." The sirens were almost at their door now, but Robert's team was already moving. His security chief, a former FBI agent named Thomas Riley, appeared in the ballroom with a tablet in his hands. "Sir, we've been monitoring communications as you requested after the suspicious medication changes last month. We have everything." The tablet screen displayed a series of text messages between Victoria and Dr. Whitmore, documenting their plan in chilling detail. Victoria's confident expression crumbled as she realized her electronic communications had been compromised. The messages revealed not just the commitment conspiracy, but months of abuse carefully hidden from Robert's view. Photos of Lily's injuries, discussions about dosing her food with sedatives to make her appear unstable, and even conversations about staging accidents to make her death look natural. The front door opened and paramedics entered, but they were followed immediately by police officers and a social worker carrying an emergency protective order. Victoria's plan had backfired spectacularly, and now she was the one facing commitment to a jail cell. "Mrs. Chun," Officer Sarah Martinez announced, "you're under arrest for child abuse, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and attempted fraud. You have the right to remain silent." The handcuffs clicked around Victoria's wrists as the room erupted in chaos. Guests pulled out their phones, capturing every moment of her downfall for social media posterity. Dr. Whitmore, who had been waiting in his car outside, tried to flee when he saw the police cars, but Robert's security team had anticipated that move. Within minutes, the corrupt psychiatrist was also in custody, his fabricated medical records seized as evidence. As the dust settled and the last of the police cars drove away, Robert found himself alone in the mansion with Lily for the first time since before his remarriage. The grand ballroom, which had hosted so many successful business gatherings, now felt like a mausoleum of his failures as a father. "I should have known," he said, kneeling beside her wheelchair again. "All those times you tried to tell me something was wrong, all those nights you had nightmares, all those drawings you made of dark clouds and locked doors. I should have listened." Lily reached out and touched his face, her small fingers gentle against his cheek. "You listened tonight," she said simply. "That's what matters." But Robert knew it wasn't that simple. The damage done over 3 years of systematic abuse wouldn't disappear overnight. Lily would need extensive therapy, medical care for her injuries, and most importantly, time to rebuild trust in the world around her. He had his fortune, but money couldn't buy back the childhood Victoria had stolen from his daughter. Dr. Therese, who had remained after the other guests departed, approached them carefully. "Mr. Chun, I specialize in trauma recovery for children with disabilities. If you're interested, I'd like to help Lily begin the healing process. But I want you to understand that this will be a long journey, and there will be setbacks along the way." Robert looked at his daughter, seeing not just the injuries Victoria had inflicted, but the incredible strength that had allowed her to survive 3 years of torment. "Whatever it takes," he said firmly. "Whatever she needs." 6 months later, Robert sat in a courtroom packed with reporters and supporters, holding Lily's hand as the judge prepared to deliver Victoria's sentence. The trial had been a media sensation, exposing not just Victoria's crimes, but the broader issue of abuse against disabled children. Lily had testified via video link, her voice steady and clear as she described years of systematic cruelty that had gone unnoticed by the adults who should have protected her. The evidence presented during the trial painted a horrifying picture of calculated abuse. Victoria had researched Lily's disability extensively, learning exactly how to inflict maximum psychological damage while leaving minimal physical evidence. She had isolated the child from potential allies, convinced caregivers that Lily's reports of mistreatment were symptoms of mental illness, and gradually escalated her cruelty as she gained confidence in her methods. The defendant showed a level of premeditation and callousness that shocks the conscience, Judge Patricia Williams stated, her voice carrying across the silent courtroom. She targeted a vulnerable child, exploited that child's disability to ensure silence, and manipulated systems designed to protect children to instead victimize them further. Victoria sat at the defendant's table, her designer clothes replaced by an orange jumpsuit, her perfectly styled hair now limp and unkempt. The woman who had once commanded rooms full of New York's elite now looked small and defeated, her mask of respectability finally stripped away completely. Furthermore, the judge continued, the defendant's actions represent a betrayal of the most sacred trust, that between a parent and child. While she was not Lily's biological mother, she accepted the responsibilities of parenthood when she married Mr. Chun, and she violated those responsibilities in the most heinous way possible. Lily squeezed her father's hand as the judge prepared to announce the sentence. Over the past 6 months, she had grown stronger both physically and emotionally. The burns on her face had healed, leaving only faint scars that would fade with time. More importantly, the fear that had haunted her eyes was gradually being replaced by confidence and hope. Victoria Chun, you are hereby sentenced to 15 years in state prison without the possibility of parole for 10 years. Dr. Whitmore, as your co-conspirator, you are sentenced to 12 years in prison and the permanent revocation of your medical license in all 50 states. The courtroom erupted in applause, but Robert only had eyes for his daughter. Lily was crying, but these were tears of relief rather than pain. For the first time in years, she could truly believe that the nightmare was over. It's finished, Robert whispered to her as the bailiffs led Victoria away. You're safe now. But even as he spoke those words, Robert knew that their real work was just beginning. The legal victory was important, but healing from trauma was a much longer and more complex process than any court case. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions and cameras flashed, but Robert and Lily moved through the chaos surrounded by their security team. They had learned to navigate the media attention that had followed their story, using it to advocate for other vulnerable children while protecting Lily's privacy as much as possible. Dr. Torres met them at their car, carrying a folder of artwork that Lily had created during their therapy sessions. The drawings showed a dramatic evolution from the dark, claustrophobic images she had produced during the worst of her abuse to bright, hopeful scenes of families and healing. "Look what she drew yesterday," Dr. Torres said, showing them a picture of a little girl in a wheelchair flying a colorful kite in a sunny field. She titled it Freedom. Robert felt tears welling up in his eyes as he looked at his daughter's artwork. The journey from victim to survivor was far from complete, but Lily was already showing remarkable resilience. She had found her voice, both literally in the courtroom and figuratively in her art. 2 years after that horrific night at the mansion, Robert pushed Lily's wheelchair along a beach at sunset, the sound of waves providing a peaceful soundtrack to their conversation. The old wheelchair had been replaced with a state-of-the-art model that gave Lily much more independence, but she still enjoyed these quiet moments when her father could push her along their favorite walking paths. "Dad, can I ask you something?" Lily said, her voice much stronger and more confident than it had been during the trial. "Anything," Robert replied, slowing their pace so they could watch the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. "Do you think Victoria was born evil, or did something make her that way?" The question caught Robert off guard. At 11 years old, Lily was grappling with concepts that many adults struggled to understand. Her therapy had helped her process her trauma, but it had also made her remarkably insightful about human nature and the complexities of abuse. "I think," Robert said carefully, "that some people make choices that hurt others, and when they keep making those choices, they become the kind of person who could do terrible things. But that doesn't excuse what she did to you, and it doesn't mean you have to forgive her." Lily nodded thoughtfully. "Dr. Torres says forgiveness is something I can choose to do for myself if I want to, but I don't have to do it for anyone else. Right now, I'm not ready, and that's okay." Robert marveled at his daughter's emotional intelligence. The scared, broken child from that night at the mansion had grown into a wise, articulate young person who understood her own healing process better than many adults understood theirs. "I'm proud of you," he said, squeezing her shoulder gently. "Not just for surviving what happened to you, but for how you've chosen to heal from it." They had both changed dramatically over the past 2 years. Robert had restructured his entire company, promoting executives who could handle day-to-day operations while he focused more on being present for his daughter. He had learned that success in business meant nothing if he failed as a father. Lily had not only recovered from her physical injuries, but had discovered talents and interests that Victoria's abuse had suppressed. She was an accomplished artist, a talented writer, and an advocate for other disabled children who had experienced abuse. Her testimony had led to changes in how social services investigated allegations of abuse against disabled children, ensuring that their voices would be heard and believed. "There's something else I want to tell you," Lily said as they reached their favorite spot on the beach, a small cove protected from the wind where they often stopped to talk. "What's that, sweetheart?" "I want to be a lawyer when I grow up. I want to help kids like me, kids who get hurt and nobody believes them. I want to make sure they have someone who will fight for them the way you fought for me." Robert felt his heart swell with pride and love. His daughter had taken the worst experience of her life and transformed it into a mission to help others. She had found purpose in her pain and was determined to use her voice to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. "If that's what you want to do," he said, "then I'll do everything I can to help you achieve that dream. But remember, you don't have to save the world to make me proud. You already have." As the sun disappeared below the horizon, father and daughter sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. The beach was peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos and trauma that had once defined their lives. "Dad," Lily said as they prepared to head home. "Yes. Thank you for not giving up on me. Even when I thought no one would ever believe me, even when I thought I wasn't worth saving, you showed me that I was wrong. You showed me that love is stronger than fear." Robert knelt beside her wheelchair, taking her hands in his. "You were never not worth saving, Lily. You were always worth everything. I just wish I had realized it sooner." As they made their way back to the car, Robert reflected on how much their lives had changed. The mansion had been sold, its grand ballrooms and elegant staircases holding too many painful memories. They now lived in a smaller, more accessible home near the beach, where Lily could pursue her art and her advocacy work in peace. The Chin Foundation, established with a significant portion of Robert's fortune, had become a leading organization in the fight against child abuse, particularly focusing on the unique vulnerabilities faced by disabled children. Lily served on the Youth Advisory Board, helping to shape programs and policies that would protect future generations. Victoria remained in prison, her appeals exhausted and her former life completely destroyed. Occasionally, Robert wondered if he should feel some satisfaction in her downfall, but mostly he just felt sad that it had taken such extreme measures to protect his daughter. He hoped that other parents would learn from his mistakes and listen to their children before it was too late. Dr. Torres continued to work with both Robert and Lily, helping them navigate the ongoing challenges of trauma recovery and family rebuilding. She had become not just a therapist, but a trusted friend, someone who had witnessed their darkest moments and celebrated their healing journey. The scars from those 3 years of abuse would never completely disappear, but they had become part of Lily's story rather than the entire story. She was no longer defined by what had been done to her, but by how she had chosen to respond to it. As they drove home along the coastal highway, Lily worked on her latest art project, a series of paintings depicting children of all abilities playing together in various settings. The paintings would be displayed at a fundraising gala for the Chin Foundation next month, where Lily would also give a speech about resilience and recovery. "Are you nervous about speaking at the gala?" Robert asked, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. "A little," Lily admitted, "but mostly I'm excited. Every time I tell my story, I think about some kid out there who might hear it and realize they're not alone. Maybe some parent will hear it and pay more attention to their child. Maybe some social worker will remember it when they're investigating a case. If my story can help even one person, then everything we went through was worth it." Robert had to pull over for a moment as tears blurred his vision. His daughter's capacity for hope and healing continued to amaze him. She had every right to be bitter and angry, yet she had chosen instead to use her experience as a source of strength and compassion for others. The story of Robert and Lily Chun had become a symbol of hope for abuse survivors everywhere. It proved that even in the darkest circumstances, love could triumph over cruelty, truth could overcome deception, and healing was possible even after the most severe trauma. Their journey wasn't over. Trauma recovery was a lifelong process, and there would undoubtedly be more challenges ahead. But they would face those challenges together, as a family united by love, strengthened by adversity, and committed to protecting others from experiencing what they had endured. As they pulled into their driveway, and Robert helped Lily transfer from the car to her wheelchair, she looked up at him with a smile that lit up the darkness. "I love you, Dad," she said simply. "I love you too, sweetheart. Always and forever." The porch light illuminated their path as they made their way into their home, leaving the shadows of the past behind and moving forward into a future filled with possibility, purpose, and most importantly, the unbreakable bond between a father and daughter who had survived the unthinkable and emerged stronger than ever before. If this story of courage, justice, and healing touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories that remind us of the strength of the human spirit and the importance of protecting those who cannot protect themselves. See you in the next video.